Okay, welcome to Dive into World Building. We are world building and we're talking about underwear. And this is a weird topic. I know it sounds really odd, but like I had this whole group of people who were on Facebook the other day who wanted to talk about underwear because so many people get it wrong, especially when you're talking about historical underwear. Right? You can't have a time travel piece where somebody goes back in time and there's a push-up bra.
Uh-huh.
You just you're gonna
Cleopatra in a push-up bra. Yeah, no.
Push-up crocodile maybe, but not a bra so much. No.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of where I wanted to start. And honestly, my husband and I just watched the mini series of Pride and Prejudice, the one with Colin Firth in it.
That one.
That one. But like we'd heard about it so many times. So we were like, oh, okay, we're gonna like go and we're gonna look at it. And it was really, first of all, it was really cool, but second of all, it was really interesting because you've got this very, very distinct silhouette for the Regency era women, right? And there are actually tons of YouTube resources about this. So anybody who's watching this, you can go and you can find like YouTube guidelines on historical period underwear. But the silhouette that's created by the dress is very dependent on what's underneath the dress.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that is layers and layers of various things. And there were periods of time where people had to get sewn into their clothes if they were nobles, and they would have like the front panel that would get sewn on in the morning. And yeah, so you definitely had to have some
or the placement of buttons a bit, or
careful placement of things, careful stitching, I would say.
Oh, that too, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, he said, shifting his chair.
Yes. Well, and also words just that people aren't used to connecting with this sort of thing. I actually had to look up farthingale 3 days ago. And that's basically a hoop skirt. It's those big, wide hoop skirts that you're seeing Elizabethan women wear. And that's what that was called then. It wasn't called a hoop skirt. So when you start looking into period references, you have to learn all the period jargon as well.
Yeah. The correct terminology.
Mm-hmm. And just like, I think that a lot of people have a hard time thinking back before spandex and elastic.
Yeah.
And those are all really modern inventions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, why did people wear togas when they wore togas? Because there were no buttons, right? Like, if buttons are not a thing, you've got some limitations.
No frogs, just, yep. And even then, you had to have, several people like get you into your toga. It's like the Indian sari. It takes like 4 people to get you into one of those things.
It takes a village.
It really does. Straight pins. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so, you have that question of how many people does it require to dress you? Mm-hmm. And so what are you wearing if you don't have people to dress you?
A lot less.
A lot less, right? Well, if you don't have your seamstress to sew you into your clothes, you're kind of out of luck, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's part of the sewing you into your clothes was not just that we don't have any other way to do this. It was also that we need to take off this intricately stitched embroidery before we try and wash the rest of it.
Sure.
And so a lot of things that were made of different kinds of cloth had different ways of laundering them. Mm-hmm. So you basically had to unsew most of the garment in order to wash it correctly.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense if they're different fabrics and
Mhm.
types, and yeah, you just don't all want to put it all into one tub. That'd be bad.
So do either of you know about corsets?
What
No.
about corsets?
Like, because
Yes.
the way that people wear corsets now, and I don't know if it's the same way that people would have worn corsets back in the day.
No, is
And
where I
it
would go
seems to
with
me they
that.
wouldn't be the same.
We don't use corsets as a functional piece of clothing. It's a piece of costumery now.
Yeah.
And so we are looking for different effects, actually. When you were wearing corsets in the 1500s, 1600s, you were, yes, trying to create that silhouette.
Mm-hmm.
So the waist lacing and the rib lacing was really important. And that's where you get those, it's anecdotal, but it's also true. People like putting their foot on the small of your back to pull that
holding onto the bedpost.
17-inch waist.
Yeah.
And then going up further, and it wasn't actually a breast support garment whatsoever. It was just for that rib and waist architecture. And actually, I have a book by the brother of the guy from the Road to Wellville. And I can't remember his name right now. But he was the first person to publish a book about women's health that said things like, corsets are bad for you because it's pushing your organs in directions they're not supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people are fainting all the time, because they can't breathe. And the first guy to say that, this is like 1920 or something. The book is only like 100 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's really kind of a big change.
Yeah.
We don't say now that a wife's beauty is in the span of her waist. And that is a thing. That, in fact, I think I got that from Little House on the Prairie.
Oy.
Because they were talking about Mrs. Boast and how tiny her waist was.
Waspish waist, I believe, is the phrase.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And waspish is usually a bad thing, but no, there it's fine. Okay.
That's what they're going for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And this was things that were of considerable expense.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, spinster at that time would have been someone who was weaving her own cloth to the point that she was independent of men, which is one of the reasons it's a bad word. They're like, well, they don't need us, and they don't even do anything about us. Yeah, well, yeah, no. So yeah, and
when that happens.
To bring us back to the underwear thing, if you are sewn into your bodice and you're wearing a corset which ties in the back, which you cannot loosen yourself,
Yeah.
and you're standing in court in a massive hoop skirt for 7 or 8 hours at a time,
Yeah.
what's your bathroom journey look like there?
Not much.
Well, what kind of underwear do you have to be wearing?
Basically none. Or like crotchless.
Well, and there you go. What you're looking at are basically like a bloomer,
Mm-hmm.
with no center seam. So you can grab the bottom hoop of your skirt in the front and pick it up. And then all of a sudden you have access. And you have to pick up the back too. Stools used to be stools, so they didn't have a back to them. So you could just put your skirt around the whole thing and kind of squat down.
Yeah.
And so the bloomers underneath had no center seam, so they just split open.
Yeah.
Which, also helped with the having of illegitimate children. But anyway,
this was always going to be a funny topic.
I never thought of it that way before.
Oh yes, how many ways can you peel a grape?
I think we broke Paul.
Yeah, there were all sorts of ways and things to do with that. And so, yeah, like even for what I'm talking about, like you're in court. I mean, you've seen Dangerous Liaisons, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
And so they're having sex in closets and blah, blah, blah. And they're not getting out of these costumes. They're
Right.
Okay. I point is taken.
But can you imagine? And a lot of it is sort of like, if you think about it, it's sort of like the sort of hijab moment where after the wedding, the woman takes her hijab off and the guy sees her hair for the first time. Like, the idea of being naked with somebody was this amazingly scandalous idea. Having sex with somebody, not so much. But the actual not having clothing on and not having all of those supports, that was a huge deal. And this had to do a huge amount with the economy of the times, because we were still whaling and all that boning. There's a reason it's called boning, whalebone.
Yeah, whalebone. And it can't have been easy to access that much whalebone.
Well, think again about the period and what we are using for lighting.
Right, whale oil.
Yeah.
So I guess
we're killing lots and lots.
I guess the bones would have been easier to access than you'd think, just because of the number of whales required for the oil.
Right, and they're not actually usually talking about whale bone per se, like the skeleton of the whale. They're talking about baleen.
Mm-hmm.
So all the plates in the mouth.
Oh, okay.
Tiny. But yeah, and all of that has to be individually sewn and shaped to the specific person that it's for.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be your, like, okay, where did I get this? Hawaii, the book, James Michener. We're talking about getting the women dressed, and this is on a ship where they have like a 10 by 14 space if they're lucky. Actually, it wasn't even that big, because the 6-foot guy couldn't stretch all the way out on the bunk. And so there's 4 bunks in there, and then all of their luggage on the floor, and they're trying to get the women dressed. And so the women would be wearing things like a pair of linen stockings, and then a pair of wool stockings, and then their bloomers, and then you would attach that to the garter, and then you put the bloomers on over top of that, and then they would put on their linen skirt, and then their wool skirt, and then they would have the overskirt, which would be made of whatever expensive fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing goes with, you'd wear a chemise under your corsets, and then possibly one on top, and then the shirt, and then the dress goes on over that, and then gloves and veils, and without that 87,000 layers, the woman was not properly founded.
Yeah.
So it was an amazing amount of stuff, and he talked a lot about that in that book, about how the European women were so, and the men were so not dressed for the climate.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the reasons that the Hawaiians didn't like Europeans, is that they stank, because they're wearing all these layers of linen and wool in a tropical climate.
Yeah.
And Hawaiians would like just run into the ocean and wash. They're like, why? What is the deal? And have you washed your hair this year? Like, gross. So their idea of scandalous was that, these girls were running around wearing no clothing. And it wasn't just that they weren't wearing any clothing, it was that they weren't wearing the clothing that they expected out of that.
Mm-hmm.
They had free hair and free bodies and free everything. And yeah.
I mean, it's funny how those expectations, side note, I mean, you see some Victorian pictures of the Annunciation, and the Virgin Mary is dressed like a Victorian matron. Like, that's not how that works.
Right. Can you imagine that in Israel?
Oh God, no, that'd be horrible.
So yeah, and that's the Western version of it. I don't know what else. I don't have a really good base of knowledge in anybody and any other cultures as far as that goes. Mm-hmm. And since it was the English that ate everyone, we kind of got stuck with this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I mean, yeah, once you start talking about, let's see, what do I know? I'm trying to think of what I know about underwear in Japan, if I know anything. I know that there's long underwear for the winter, at least in modern times. No, I don't know enough about, but I think that in fact, when you're balled up in a kimono, again, it's a question of no, you're not getting out of it.
Yep.
So
there again, access doesn't involve getting out of it. You have to figure your way around it.
Yeah. I've seen Shogun.
I have not. But
well, particularly if you're like, if you're stuck in a 12-layer kimono,
yeah.
each layer of which is carefully placed, you're not getting out of it to have a potty break.
And no one is tying your obi for you, because that's not a thing you can do yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They just didn't sew you in.
Yeah. They don't talk about that stuff a lot. It's funny because I think people in fiction don't go to the bathroom a lot.
Dude, that is a huge critique I have of pretty much everything. Like the spaceships that have bathrooms, I can count on one hand. And I'm like, I don't really think they were using replicator technology for this. I just don't.
It's true. Well, it's like the first science fiction show I can definitively say had a bathroom scene was Babylon 5. And I was like, they have a bathroom. This is what it looks like. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's no Mile High Club before that.
You know what? The sun is blazing through my window. Hang on, I'm gonna close my curtain a little better.
Oh, but yeah, there's a whole and also spaceships, jumpsuits. Why?
Why?
Wear a garment where I have to put the entire top of it on the floor behind my feet in order to get out of it enough to go to the bathroom. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, where did that tradition come from?
Masochists?
I'm sure it's variation on uniform, maybe? It's like,
well, I mean, a lot of women and girls' clothes are designed to be these one-piece darling things that are going to leave you shivering with every piece of clothing you own around your ankles when you're in the bathroom, and that always seemed really stupid to me.
Yeah, because the complaint about women in bathrooms is they spend too much time in them. It's like, well, then give us clothing that gets us in and out really fast.
Because totally no.
Yeah. Why are there not jumpsuits with a drop seat? I'm just asking. So yeah, there's that. There's no one really talks about men's underwear, such as it was, which there may not have been a lot of. Because if you look at any, Revolutionary War portraiture, you can tell whether they had a small operation at day 7. They weren't wearing underwear.
It's not something. I mean, as the one guy in this trio, it's not something my family talked about. I mean, growing up, I had no idea that there was something other than briefs until I started shopping for underwear on my own. It's like, what the heck are boxers? No one told me about boxers. I'm serious. It's like, what the heck are these? And how do I wear them? I think I'm gonna go back to briefs.
They're shorts. This is
not
it's like,
like, this is not proper underwear. It's not a brief. It's like,
yeah, but there was no such thing as a package then. You laid everything out, sort of Lemmy style for everyone to see. If you look at the portraiture, it's really obvious that they were making a big deal out of this.
Yeah,
it's true.
And I mean, of course, that there was that time when showing that off was a big thing, and you like all the cod pieces and stuff.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
Yeah.
Do you know what the latest sort of public health idea of the cod piece even is?
What's that, Kate?
Well,
I'm not gonna like this, am I?
You really not. There were things called STDs back then.
They
But we
still
still have
exist now.
We still have now. But what one of the functions of your cod piece was to
Oh no.
hold the wadded up linen that was, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. The more you know.
Yeah.
Lord help me.
Well, if you think about it, some of the treatments for that were, topical applications of mercury, and that's not good for your skin.
Oh, no, indeed.
No.
Oh.
So yeah. Go look up the history of syphilis. Just have a good time.
A little light reading.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so there's lots of reasons for underwear being the way it was. Now that I think of it, we don't have a whole lot of anecdotal evidence about how the whole menstrual cycle cloth moment went.
Yeah.
We really, I think I have encountered that being mentioned in science fiction maybe a handful of times, all of it by female writers. And if you think about it, populating the universe might have something to do with that. I don't know.
Maybe, could be. You never know.
So you'd think that we'd have people who were paying attention to that sort of thing, and it would be, I don't know, ritualized in a way that it isn't right now. I don't know, actually it is, but most guys don't know that, and women don't talk about it.
But
I did think that through for my book.
Okay.
I did, but I was like, I can get away with not putting it in here because this time frame is only about 3 weeks long.
Yeah.
And I can just kind of sneak it in there.
Hmm?
Works for me.
Paul?
No problem. Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
No. It just reminds me anecdotally of a sales tax freedom on tampons and a male legislator not understanding how menstruation clearly works from his opposition to it. It's like, wow, I guess sex ed is really bad in your state.
Yeah. Really.
I mean, when Sally Ride went up on the space shuttle for the first time, they were like, well, she's going to need tampons, so we'll send 100. I am not kidding you. I am not kidding you.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so engineers, which I know engineers, but still, these are men who have wives and daughters.
Yeah.
Thinking that she's going to need 100 tampons for, 2 weeks in space.
Well, maybe she wants to make a chess set or something.
Right. Like, I don't know.
Or like use it to sort of mop up other sorts of messes.
There's a reason cardiac tamponade is called that.
Yes.
Saying.
It can be used for other things. However, I'm not sure you want to.
Yeah, it's actually amazing what pads can do for open wounds, man. If you got nothing else, there you go. It's padding and
and so I have heard. But I think we want to return to this one point for the sake of anybody who watches this, and that is, that you should not fail to think through underwear when you're making a secondary world.
Mm-hmm.
But that you should also think through why people wear the underwear that they do in this world, right? Mm-hmm. If you have aliens with alternate biology, you got to think about where their secretions are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and deal with that. That reminds me of Harry Turtledub's A World of Difference, where you have the Martians, actually called the Minervans because Mars is called Minerva here, and the way their biology works and where their secretions are is very different from ours, and the female doctor has to figure out how to save the alien's life when that process goes awry, and understanding how that all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I haven't read that, but now I should.
So you really don't want to have unconsidered underwear. I mean, you can kind of slot in underwear under certain kinds of circumstances. I had a relatively easy time with it myself because I didn't have to do a whole ton. But I need to think through some stuff as I'm going forward and not dealing with really rich people, right? Because rich people's underwear is not going to look like poor people's underwear.
No. Well, and also, I mean, like, you know, you've got a lot of costumery. And so one of the things that you should probably be thinking about is garters and garter belts for hose, things like that. I don't know what they're actually wearing in their lower bodies, but that's, you know, how are we dealing with our sock moment? You know, it just occurred to me that I'm going to have this whole like math, military fiction thing going on. They're going out on a week of maneuvers. They better turn their underwear, use the other side, like 2.5 days in. You know, but that's a reality, you know.
Take the Big Hero 6 approach.
But it's like, do you get a chance to wash stuff out? Is it draped across the light bulb in your suite? You know, and that's another part of it is that no one ever talked about as far as Star Trek was concerned was laundry. Who's doing it? What's their role? What's their function? How does that work? Battlestar Galactica, the new one, actually did a really good job of that. And the show, an episode called Dirty Hands. I think it's season 2. Really good.
Especially in not worlds which aren't as technologically advanced as say the first world era. Like laundry up in the backcountry of Nepal is a very different process than in Kathmandu, I will tell you.
Yeah.
And sometimes, depending on who you are, you know, it gets easier. When I was in Africa, they said, do you want us to do laundry? And they're like, yes, you should do laundry. I don't know what you're talking about. And then our clothes would disappear and come back folded. And I was like, well, I had no idea. Okay. So, and you just tip people. Who takes care of that sort of thing tends to have a big class issue around it.
Yep.
So how is your society structured? If you're going to make that a more valued position, how are you going to do that? And you know, it's gonna cascade through your world building and change it.
Yeah. What is your soap made out of? Where do you get your cleaning supplies and access to fresh water? And it's like that depends where you're going to keep places. I mean, laundry in a desert's very different than laundry in England.
Yes.
So
yes, and what chemicals are you using? You know, are you using stale urine? How's that going to go? Because that's a bleach. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of, if you go and look up how to clean different fabrics at different times, that thing about taking the pieces apart, on lawn you're going to be using sort of urine and that sort of thing as a bleach. On other things, you're going to want to be using a type of mud to just get the oil off of it. There's a whole bunch of textile science basically that goes into this that I just have not seen in science fiction for the most part ever.
Yep.
But yeah, so, and I don't know. I'm really having trouble deciding whether, I don't think anybody needs bras in 0G. That's just my assumption.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, bras is such a big topic. I mean, basically engage with any, cadre of bra wearing people online. You will have a discussion that goes on and on and on and on. And I have participated in these. But yeah, because it's not just the underwear, right? It's the culture surrounding the use of the underwear. And Oh my goodness, if somebody sees your nipples, it's the worst thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like,
Um,
really?
does the words wardrobe malfunction ring a bell?
Yeah.
Well, and 400 years earlier, that would be a sign of matriarchy and being able to feed your babies and stuff like that. And one of the things that we tend to get stuck in is our Western view of things. African men think that Western white men are little tiny babies because they are all obsessed with breasts. And as far as they're concerned, breasts are for feeding babies. And I don't know what your freaking problem is with it.
Mm.
So it's very much a discussion of viewpoints.
I think a lot of Western culture is obsessed with breasts, not just men. Like, but I mean, I think it probably grows from there. It's a sort of it's a Western patriarchal view of breasts. But like nobody gets to get away from this whole fixation.
No, really not. And I was actually having this conversation with my partner who does burlesque, so she wears a corset fairly often. And, people are like, well, I have a partner who wears this thing, therefore I get to have my fantasy. I'm like, you know what the reality of that is? You end up giving first aid to somebody who is hot and sweaty and just wants to get home and take this damn corset off.
Yeah.
It's not sexy. It's not any of those things.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to hear that, but it is still true.
Well, there's always, I think it's always useful to step back and say, what is the narrative about this versus the actual reality of this? Because we have narratives about all sorts of things.
Well, sure we do. And so no one talks about who's got a panty line in a jumpsuit and why.
Yeah.
I don't think 7 of 9 ever had a panty line in her entire life. And she was clearly wearing a bra of some sort. But that was sort of obscured in the costume making as well.
Well, wasn't there, oh my gosh, I'm now remembering.
He's also wearing a corset.
There was some dude who said women don't wear underwear in space. It was George Lucas.
Well, would you like to see my surprised face again?
Yeah, so that was an issue with Princess Leia and costumes.
George Lucas.
Flames on the side of my face.
Thank you. We should have an entire show about George Lucas, about how much we are not happy about George Lucas. But yes, flame.
Flame.
I'm sure he thinks that women shouldn't wear underwear in space, but I'm pretty sure that the 28 days ends and he's going to be real happy about that shit.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had to actually learn about. Who wrote Packing for Mars? I can't remember.
Mary Roach, I think.
Thank you. By the way, Mary Roach, buy all her books, read them all. They're just she is great. Mary Roach.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, I love her. But there was a thing about menstruation in space. Now you think about it as a menstruating person, you're like, well, gravity has to have a whole lot of, sway here, right?
Yeah.
As it turns out, no.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It wicks.
It wicks. And because your uterus is convulsing in the ways you really don't like and take a lot of Advil about, it's pushing all of that out anyway. So you will still menstruate in space. It might be a little slower, but that's about it. It's not really more about gravity. It's more about the actual physics of that. But as someone else pointed out, I don't think we've ever put a menstruating woman in space. Russians, I believe, did, because the first one, Maria, I can't remember her name, but I think she was of childbearing age, but I think she wasn't up there long enough. And where is my phone?
The first Russian woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova?
Thank you. Who is still alive and still a member of the Russian parliament, by the way.
Oh, did not know that. That's very cool.
But I don't think she was up there long enough. So, and we just, I would actually have to look up the woman who just came home from 300 something days in space.
Yeah.
I don't think she's over 45.
Yeah. I saw that. I saw her in the article just the other day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you want to talk about space toilets, and wow, have we gone off the deep end? Because that's just wet.
Christina
Christina
Koch.
Koch, is it?
Yeah, Christina Koch. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. I wanted to look it up.
Yeah, it was 300 something. So yeah, and
she's 41. So yeah.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting article later, and it's actually a hard thing to research because you can't do peripheral research on it and come to deductions, because there have been so few women you can absolutely pin down who it was by when they went and how long they spent. You absolutely know who it is, so they can't really tell you anything when they report things in studies like that, because it's really easy to tell.
So you got your minuscule N.
Mm-hmm. And you're in trouble with HIPAA almost immediately.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because when we see governments tracking that, it's not a good thing.
No, I mean, and it hasn't been. Ask the Habsburgs about that. Because they always had to know where everything was and when everything was, and they did not figure out that their entire problem was their overall idea of breeding.
Gee, that sounds familiar.
Patriarchal empire.
Yeah, where would I find a world like that?
I don't know.
Not a clue. But yeah, there's a whole thing that we have about kind of that entire sphere of sort of elimination reproduction and how we manage it in textile, that I don't know that anyone's come to it from that direction before. And I think it would be very revealing.
Yeah.
I'll be over here.
We'll definitely tip you after the show.
Try the veal.
Oh my God, yes, try your waitress. And that's actually another thing is, like, as much clothing that women was wearing, it still wasn't protecting them from men.
Yeah.
And for various degrees of protect. But yeah, there's that. And what happens when your underwear fails you?
Oh my God, yes.
Mm-hmm. And
come into any world building, any world, go, okay, what happens when your underwear fails you? Kate Johnston. No, but like everybody should be asking this.
Well, they should. And if you look at any of the other things that are adjacent to that area, and you go, okay, well, how did that really work? Have you ever seen a McClellan saddle? It has a channel down the center where you're sitting, supposedly for airflow. And I'm like, that looks like a ball pincher. Yeah. And if you didn't have briefs that were holding your package together and up, then isn't that falling down into the crack in your saddle? And isn't that uncomfortable? And is there a reason y'all lost that war? Except for, actually, I believe McClellan was a Northerner. But anyway.
And there's also, so seats and such are related to this, right? Mm-hmm. Bicycle seats?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I have gone shopping for bicycle seats because of discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and also, what are the mores of your time? So when people started riding bicycles, women couldn't ride bicycles because it would make them a hot and butter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I need to buy this bicycle.
Well, they couldn't go on trains either because their uteruses would like fly out.
Yes.
What?
Yes, and automobiles as well.
What?
Yeah.
Broken again. What? Oh,
That guy that I was talking about writing that book, he was also one of the first men to ever say, who was a physician, to ever say that women learning things didn't make their uteruses shrivel. I think we've dissected him this time. Yeah, it's a thing. That's what they used to believe, is that women, when you taught a woman stuff, it made her not amenable to childbearing.
Women are not female Zinti, for crying out loud.
Well, and you know what happened with that one, don't you?
No. Do I?
Where when he found the when he found the planet that had all the different biomes in it, and the guy got dumped in the Kzinti one.
Yeah.
But it was the Kazin from like.
Oh, that's right. Right, Ringworld Engineers, right.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, he was surprised to find they weren't as stupid as he thought they were. That's right.
Yep.
It's been a while, and now the gears click. Yeah.
No, that's one of my favorite books. I love that one. So yeah, there's and we think about animals wearing clothing, and there's a bunch of books where they do that, and you think about it functionally. Why would they?
Why would they?
Why are Frog and Mr. Toad dressed up in clothes?
Yeah, and I think a parrot could get a button off of someone else, but I don't know that it could dress itself.
How does that actually work?
Yeah.
Where were there opposable thumbs to put on clothes?
Well, I mean, I think it's all just, these are humans. They just don't look like them.
Right.
They're just human analogs.
Although, why has there not been I don't have the words for this. Target acquisition for pigeons. They can really, yeah. What?
They can aim. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that guy. You'd think they'd have sights or something.
Well, okay, so this is sort of bizarre, but I ran into this recently. There was a recent Ducktail episode that had Donald washing his underwear.
Donald doesn't wear underwear.
He doesn't wear underwear. And I remember the person on it was, I discovered this on Twitter, and the person, I think it was I think it was Catherine Valente. Yeah. She was going, are we to understand that Donald this entire time has been wearing the ultimate tidy of whiteys?
Apparently, yes.
And I was like, wow, that's really appalling.
Oh, that would have changed my costume so much.
Right?
Oh, God. I'm not going to be able to not think of that now.
You can see it stuck in my head.
Well, and now that I think about it, one of the things that people were freaking out about the new Cats movie.
Yeah.
Is that at some point I don't know who was in it. She used to be chubbier. She's the daughter of some really famous. Anyway, she unzips her skin.
Yeah, she unzips her skin. I saw that.
What?
And I didn't see the film. And I'm like, how does that even work? And why? I was actually really mad that for all of the time and money and animation they put in to the bosoms on those cats, Why weren't there 6 more?
Right?
I've seen a cat, haven't you?
It's the anthropomorphizing of humans again. They're not cats, they're they're cat people.
I know, but there's 8 times the room for jokes about that.
Well, yes.
Yeah, but you know what's funny? For all of the jokes that people love to make about body parts, they don't usually like to make them about boob. Like I've seen those jokes, but not that many times.
I'm
Not,
just not
like
what?
I mean that.
sci-fi, sure, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
not in like kids stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like Total Recall is one thing, but yeah, we don't find that in kids stuff.
I want to see the cat with the 8 bikini, like the bikini with 8 cups.
The bikini.
Well, they did the multiple cups thing in Star Wars, if you remember.
Oh, yeah, they did. I will give them a ceremonial roar.
But it wasn't a cat or a cat alien. It was just an alien.
It was just an alien. But yeah, I think that there are clever ways of going about this that they just don't, because people are not thinking past the immediate, here's the part that's funny and here's it's not, and this is a part joke. They're not thinking deeply enough about it to make it like really funny, like meaningful funny.
Yeah.
They're just going for the cheap joke.
They should dive more into their world building.
Cats, it's always like, yeah, that's an obvious one, and people have been making that joke for like ever.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you have to add? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yep. And that's, if I had a criticism of the Orville, that would be it. Is that they don't take the intellectual part of the joke far enough, and a lot of times it sort of falls flat as the SNL skit gets stale, because we only had a minute of funny and we had 2.5 minutes to fill.
Yeah.
And I really think if we thought more about this stuff, if we were willing to engage the realities of things, it would be funnier. Because guys have the thing where there's always the last drip that ends up in your pants, but nobody I saw that, Paul. Nobody actually makes fun of that, and they should. It's like, Folgers, go to the last drop. I mean, you can go there. Okay, maybe I can go there.
Well, I'm good. This is tangential, but like probably helpfully tangential, which is that one of my rules when I'm working in my Varn world is the first thing you think of is usually not the right thing. And neither is the second thing you think of.
Yeah.
It's usually the third thing you think of that you really start to capture how somebody's going to be reacting to something, or how somebody's going to be responding to a particular, like, what is this person going to think if such and such and such and such happens?
Right.
You usually have to just sit on it for a while and go, okay, really? Is that how it's going to work? No. What if it's this? Oh, or wait, if it's this other thing, right? Like people don't, people often hurry.
Well, our culture is a lot about the cheap shot. We're looking to make the quick joke, the quick funny, the quick haha, and go away. We're not necessarily investing in the idea itself and waiting long enough for the underlying humor to present itself. So that's one of the reasons, everybody thinks they have to be a comedian, everybody thinks they have to do the off the cuff thing, which leads to, in any group, 70% of the people going, that's what she said. Yeah, and that's not funny.
In my family, we call that ha 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 ass.
I love your children.
Just because it's everybody thinks just saying the word is funny.
Why?
But why? It's boring.
Yep.
Thinking about underwear in space is so much more interesting.
Well, and yeah.
And magic underwear.
Oh, I wasn't even gonna go there because
But if you have magic for everything, why don't you have magic for underwear?
Oh yes, that reminds me of the whole Harry Potter thing and Hogwarts and bathrooms. J.K. Rowling tried to float. It's like, no, that's not how biology works. No. No.
And how come they didn't have like little cantrips that would like pull someone's underwear up? Because that seems to be like where Hogwarts would be the thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, level 0 spell, wedgie.
Yes.
I can slowly see somebody doing that.
You know, or I mean, people have even thought it was Douglas Adams came up with the one of the party tricks was making your hostess's clamp jump 1 foot to the left.
Yes.
You know,
all of the hostess's undergarments jump 1 foot to the left.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was like a quantum thing, and right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, my head is, and Zaphod cut off the bottoms of his galactic state jeans, and I'm like, wow, we just went, whoa. That guy was so ahead of his time.
He was
and also, you know, we've been on thousands of trips through the Gamma Quadrant. Never noticed that nobody's jumpsuit ever wore out.
Maybe they were making new ones in the replicator?
Maybe. But I'm just like
it's not even knotted at. That should be knotted at, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're attacked by demons. They're shot at. They're shot up. I mean, all sorts of stuff. But their uniforms, perfect good guys.
Yeah. Well, guys, we've had fun.
Is it that time already?
It is. It's after 5 o'clock,
already.
and I just didn't even notice. So I think what I'll do is I will take us off the air. Thank you both for participating. This has been a really hilarious conversation. I was hoping it would be fun.
You betcha.
And next week is going to be awesome because we're going to have Michael Crouch on the show. And I get to talk to him twice. Once to help me figure out what to ask him because I really don't want to ask him the usual stuff that people ask him. I kind of want to ask him about his process. I want to ask him about the kind of mental work that he does when he's preparing to
what kind of underwear he's wearing.
And, you know, I think that would not be good.
Not
I mean, we could have done that this week if he'd been here, but but that said, I think it'll be really interesting. I'm looking forward to it. So I will stop my live stream.